It's working.
Good afternoon. This is Mundo de Pepita, and we are here on our Sunday Scope. This is Julie from Mundo de Pepita, and Matthew is behind the camera.
Yep. Sorry, I'm going to change the thing.
Oh.
How do you change
Hola, Carolina. Double tap. There we go.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. A little technological difficulty. Bienvenida, chica. Hola. And today we are going to talk about incorporating idioms into your daily foreign language classes. And this is part of a larger conversation that we are going to share over several different. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Hola, Jill. Welcome. And we are going to have a number of scopes over time about integrating culture into. Hola, hola. Welcome. Hola. Welcome. We're going to have several conversations. Buenas tardes. Around integrating culture using the target language. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. Hola. Hola, Soraya. Thank you for being with us today. So today we're going to talk about incorporating, thank you so much for sharing. Incorporating idioms into the daily foreign language classroom. So, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so today's, we're going to talk about how we can integrate culture into the classroom, but using the target language. So our thoughts are going to be geared toward that goal that we have as language teachers of doing 90%, hola, welcome, bringing our classes to that 90% target that we have from those guidelines from ACTFL. And there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. But one of my biggest passions is bringing culture into the classroom, but doing that with the target language. And so, as I said before, what we're going to try and do is have a number of scopes around bringing culture into the classroom using the target language and breaking that down into different smaller subtopics. So today's topic is, hola, idioms in the classroom. So when we are thinking about culture, hola, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you here. This is Mundo de Pepita, and we're talking about bringing culture into the classroom using idioms in the target language. So when I am thinking about idioms, the broad category there is idiomatic expressions. It's sayings, it's proverbs, dichos, refranes, and so on that you can bring into your classroom with your kiddos. But there has to be some forethought around which ones that you bring into your classroom. Figurative language, absolutely. Any of those types of expressions or sayings, like I said, dichos, refranes, that you might use in your classroom. Some of them are really, really great for the classroom. Thank you for all those hearts. And some of them are not as great. So what I'm going to share with you today is what works for me in my elementary foreign language classroom, how I go about incorporating those to continue to shoot for that 90% in the target language. And culture is a really great way to do that. But again, there has to be some conscious and purposeful thought behind that to make it really accessible for our kiddos, especially at the elementary level where we have novice learners. But at any level, and certainly in terms of age level, but also in terms of language experience, it's still important to really be thinking about being purposeful around your planning. So the three things that I take into consideration when I'm incorporating idioms, any type of expression or saying or idiomatic structure, these are the three things I think of. And I'm going to say the three bullets, and then I will go through them a little bit more in detail. So I'm looking for those expressions or proverbs or sayings to be relevant for my students. I want them to be part of the daily interaction with my kids, so they have a really good, thank you for those hearts, that they have a great shelf life, that we're going to use them daily. And that's part of today's talk, is how can you bring this in daily, not just as a topic that you experience and then move away from. And the last thing is, of course, that it needs to be comprehensible, both linguistically and or, well, I won't say both, and or contextually. Those are the three considerations that I'm looking for every time that I am consciously making an effort to bring idiomatic expressions or sayings, proverbs, etc. into my classroom. So let's look at those in a little bit more detail. The first one, as I said, is, are they relevant? So I teach little kids, kindergarten through 4th grade. There is a lot of figurative language that they don't understand, even in English. So when I'm looking at what ones do I want to bring into my classroom, I want them to be tangible, I want them to be concrete, I want them to make sense for my little kids. I don't want them to be something, a saying or an expression that is difficult. Absolutely, it's very hard for most of them to understand figurative language. So I try to steer clear of some of those expressions that aren't as tangible or concrete for little kids. If you teach older kids, then expressions that are more figurative, are more challenging, take a little bit more of a leap in terms of their mental capability, then great. So really, you want to be thinking about what makes sense for your age level. And like I said, for the little kids, things that are more concrete or that are somewhat clearer for them are going to be better. And I am going to give you some examples in just a second of each of these things. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're Mundo de Pepita, and we are talking about incorporating idioms into the classroom as part of a larger conversation around bringing culture into your class in the target language. So being relevant, making sure that those are expressions or sayings or proverbs that are able to be accessed by your students. And the second one, as I said, is part of your daily interaction. So in the course of our lesson, there are a lot of things that happen. There's direct instruction, there are guided activities, there is hopefully a lot of interaction between you and your kids, your students, and between your students hopefully as well. So looking for expressions that make sense in that whole ongoing lesson that is happening in your room. So things like your daily routine, things like your classroom management. There are a lot of idioms or expressions that are really perfect for classroom management. And also I would add, I'm just looking because I made a note on this for myself. Yeah, that regular conversation. Yes, the context. I'm going to get to that definitely. That idea of how you interact with kids, things that you might say because of what they say, how you react, how you respond to something that they do or say. A lot of that is idiomatic in nature. And then, of course, the third one that I said, when I'm taking into consideration what I'm going to choose to incorporate into my class, again, I try to be really purposeful, is that idea that it's comprehensible both linguistically and or in context, and that was just mentioned. So linguistically, the language itself is accessible for my students. Again, my students are novice learners. If you have students who are at a higher level, then they can handle a more complex expression or saying or idiomatic expression. But for my beginners, for novice learners, the language itself needs to be pretty accessible for them to be able to understand. And then the other part of that could and should be, does it make sense in context? Can they figure it out in context in a way that I don't have to explain it in English because it made sense for them to make that leap in their brain, in that frame of mind because of the context in which I used it, so how I might react to something that they say. Or, for example, something that we're doing, like I had mentioned earlier with classroom management, makes sense in the moment, and so I don't need to translate it. And I feel that there are many times where they don't need to be translated because I'm not necessarily expecting them to understand every single word of that saying, but rather they understand the context in which it's being used, and so it makes sense to them. And again, since we're shooting for that 90% in the target language, you really want to be purposeful around when do you translate and when do you not translate. And if you are presenting language in context, whatever it might be, whether it's idiomatic or not, that makes it a lot easier for you to state in the target language. So let's look at a few examples. Talking about relevant. So I'm going to go back through these 3 things that I take into consideration when I'm choosing idioms to include in my room. So again, as I said, a relevant saying for my kids might be that when, and that makes sense, it's concrete for my kids, when we celebrate our birthdays. Sometimes more than one kid will come up at a time. And sometimes it will be a boy and a girl, or 2 girls and a boy, or 2 boys and a girl. And we sing to them, and then they get a pencil. Thank you for the hearts. And they get to choose the color pencil that they want from a selection. So one of the things that I say, and it's just in the course of class, is if I've got this mix of boys and girls, before I hand out the pencils, I will say, limón, limonero, damas primero. Lemon, lemon tree, ladies first. Very concrete. I have it illustrated so that they can see what the different components are. It's, 4 words. It's authentic. And kids get that idea of the context of ladies first. If I was using an expression like, there are no roses without spines, yes, attention getters are a really neat way to use idioms. Thank you for sharing that. If I use the expression, no hay rosas sin espinas, it would not make much sense to my little kids. Thank you for loving that. But saying ladies first and using the expression that's an authentic cultural expression makes a lot of sense. De acuerdo, gracias. Makes a lot of sense for kids. So that's a relevant, and I will say, if we went to the next 2 pieces, for me it fits all 3 considerations. It's relevant for my kids. It certainly is part of our daily interaction because we celebrate birthdays all of the time. Thank you for that heart. And it is certainly comprehensible in the context in which we use it. While discussing gravity, todo lo que sube tiene que bajar. Sí, por supuesto. Ajá, un muy buen ejemplo. Gracias. There are lots and lots of them out there that are perfect. Another example would be not just saying for I'm hungry, tengo hambre, which of course, as we know, is idiomatic in and of itself. But then I teach my kids additionally, because we do conversations around how you're feeling all the time, I add in other expressions that are idiomatic in nature. So for example, tengo un hambre de lobo, I'm as hungry as a wolf. Or estoy feliz como una lombriz, I'm happy as an earthworm. These are really simple expressions that kids incorporate and then use all of the time because we are using those expressions quite frequently in our interactions with one another, either asking each other how they're feeling between them or if I'm asking them that question. More examples for you. So if we're looking at being, gracias, more expressions that are comprehensible in context. And again, as I said at the beginning, thinking about expressions that are really broad in terms of idiomatic expressions. So things like, in context, if a kid is trying to get my attention and I hold up my finger, this is classroom management, and I say momentico, it is a really simple way to just use an expression, but they get in context exactly what it means. Or, for example, if I want to give them a high five, I'm not a big high five kind of gal, but my kiddos are. So if I go to give them a high five and I say, choca eso cinco, they know that what I mean is high five because it's right there in the movement and the activity, the context of that expression. I am using it and it makes sense to them. So I don't even have to translate it. Again, allowing me to stay in that 20% in the target language. Other examples might be things like, for classroom management, when my kids are being a little rowdy and they're not supposed to be, I might say, silencio es oro. Silence is golden. Chocolate, Cici, yeah. They're, really great interactive expressions that we can use with our kids in our daily classes with them, whether it be for classroom management, thank you, whether it be for how we react to a kid. If I do, at the beginning of class, I always choose a helper for that particular class. And sometimes, because of the elementary school, kids are also chosen by the gen ed teacher to be the leader. Sometimes it's the same person that is the leader for the gen ed classroom and then is the secretario with me, and they will make a comment, something, they'll say, oh my gosh, she's also the leader. And I will say, ah, que casualidad. I don't react in English, I'm going to react in Spanish. And typically, a lot of those reactions, those responses to social situations are very idiomatic in nature. And so they are doing double duty for you. They're integrating culture and they're integrating language all at the same time, which we want that, right? Anytime we can have more than one bang for the buck, that is awesome. Other expressions that I might use, and there's so many of them, and I will say on our blog, elmundodepepita.blogspot.com, I have a post about idioms that I use on a regular basis in the classroom. Thank you for those hearts. That you can go right on the blog, just search the blog, just search idioms, and you'll get a whole infographic that I made of, I think, 29 that I use on a regular basis all the time. When I'm addressing the class, I will say, todo el mundo. Yes, I agree. We do want to be careful with some of them, and certainly, and I thank you for pointing that out. There are some that are, the interesting part, of course, that we know about idiomatic expressions and sayings and proverbs is also that they're regional. On my post, on my blog, I have some that are pretty commonly known and some that are very regionally specific that I've picked up from my friends over the years, but I use them, and so do my friends. Thank you for joining as native speakers. So definitely wanting to be careful also around some of those words that you use in that replace a stronger word. Probably want to stay away from those as well. I don't like to teach my kids. Of course, I'm at the elementary school, but I want to keep it really appropriate for the age level, but also because we're in a school. So when I'm addressing my whole class, todo el mundo, the whole world, lots of expressions like that are really easy to incorporate into your classroom setting. Que barbaridad. Lots of different, even dime, as simple as that is, if, someone says, a kiddo says, señora, I have a question, dime. Just those really, really simple little phrases are as powerful as some of those bigger ones. When we're talking about likes and dislikes and things of that nature, and a kid says, "Ew, he doesn't like chocolate," or something. They make, those funny expressions, funny reactions to each other. I will say, sobre gustos no hay nada escrito. About taste, there's nothing written down, right? Everyone has their own taste. So there are lots of different ways, and I really, really suggest you go onto our blog so you can see the list of our 29 that I use on a daily basis. I was thinking about this morning as I was thinking about today's Periscope, that I had to do a second one because I didn't include everything that I use. So I thought, I think I need to make another infographic with more of the sayings that I use. But to recap, entre gustos no hay disgustos. Ay, sí. Gracias por eso. Such a simple little phrase, but easy to incorporate into class. So if we did a recap on when you are thinking about your classroom and wanting to integrate culture, keep that definition broad and include idioms, but be sure that they are these three things, that they're relevant and appropriate for your kids, for the age level that they are at, making sure that if it's a novice learner or a young learner, that's very tangible and concrete so that they can understand it. Secondly, you want to try and use them in your daily interactions so they are not, okay, bueno, en Colombia, sí, bueno. You want those to be part of your daily interactions. We're really trying to shoot for that 90% in the target language, and at the same time, we really want to have culture in our classrooms. And so idioms are a great way. We've got a great Colombia contingency today. Viva Colombia. We can use those in our daily interactions if we are a little bit thoughtful about it and if we plan for them. And lastly, wanting them to be comprehensible both linguistically, especially for our novice learners, they can understand or pick apart, or maybe we have to translate once, but then we don't have to translate again because we're shooting for that 90% and it's concrete enough for them to understand, and or is comprehensible in context. So it makes sense and no translation is needed because the expression is used in context for our students to be able to figure out without even having to look at the English. So those are the three considerations that I think about when I'm including idioms in the classroom. There are so many of them that could be used, and again, I really encourage you to go to our blog and do a little search in the box that says idioms, and you'll find the infographic of the ones that I use on a regular basis in my elementary classroom. I would also encourage you to join us online at Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat. We are having so much fun on Snapchat. Please add us. We're doing a whole bunch of cortos for your students and for you. And also on Pinterest and, of course, here on Periscope. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you. Awesome. Concrete, comprehensible context. Absolutely. That was perfectly put. Gracias, Carolina. And we will see you hopefully next Sunday. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Ciao.
How do I turn this thing off?